seeing guys on there like JJ Ortega-Whiteside, Jalen Reagor. Is this a product of how we drafting better, or is this a product of those guys just not being able to make it happen?
Honestly, it's more a product of those guys not being able to make it happen. Because if those guys, and look, I feel like we've gotten to the point now where it's almost like piling on with JJ and Reagor.
You hate to even talk about it. I try to get you to talk
it's
about
like we know the situation, right? We know they haven't been good picks. We know they're not good receivers in the NFL.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Again, little big announcement coming up a little bit later from a station and channel standpoint. Rob Ellis and Barrett Brooks on this Tuesday with you, joined by the man who covers the Birds like no other. He is the greatest Eagles beat writer, reporter in the history. Hold on, Dave. I want to see exactly how you wrote this. No, I'm kidding. Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philadelphia. What's up, Dave?
Checks in the mail, Rob. I appreciate it.
Got it, my man. Now, did we go on our wild adventures that we generally go on every single off season? Where was the latest this year?
It wasn't too wild this year. I was up in Washington State for a couple weeks. Was in British Columbia for a little bit of that. It was fun. Beautiful country up there. Yeah. That's
tame for you. You're usually in like Tanzania or somewhere else, right? What would have been the spots the last few years? Kind of tame. Well, like COVID ruined a lot of it. And pre-COVID, maybe. Let's go pre-COVID. Yeah, pre-COVID. And it's still like when I was booking a trip this summer, it was still a little tough to figure out the restrictions everywhere. Right. So staying in the country and going to Canada for a few days, I finally left the country. That felt good. There you go. But it was fun. It was a beautiful. I mean, it's great. Like some of the land up there is just unreal. So it was a fun couple weeks for sure. Very cool, man. Very cool. All right, so a lot of good stuff. You're producing a lot of great stuff.
Hold on, go ahead, Barry. He doesn't talk about that. He was 5 feet, 10 feet away from a gorilla, a silverback gorilla. Were you up there? Did you see any bears? The polar bear or anything?
You didn't mention this, Dave.
Well, I mean, that was a few years ago. That was what year was that? I guess 2018, maybe. When I was in
he could smell the gorilla.
Yeah, I was in Uganda. That was pretty cool. That was one of the wilder experiences of my life for sure.
So no brown bears, no Kodiak bears.
So this is funny. I didn't see any bears, but we were in Canada. We were doing a little hike in Canada, and this woman is walking her dog along the trail, no leash, and she just says, "Oh yeah, you guys, I don't know how far you're going up the trail, but there was a little bear up there. He was friendly, just a black bear, just to let you know." And she kept going about her day. And we stopped. We're like, are we going to keep going here? Like, I don't.
Yeah, I'm kind of good. Yeah,
I've seen plenty of bears, but I don't want to run into one on a trail.
Yeah, right.
Bro, I don't play like that at all. I did a game in Montana, and there was a brown bear alert. There was a brown bear alert. That's a grizzly bear.
Yeah,
a grizzly bear alert on campus, and I had to go through campus to get to the stadium. And they were like, so my play-by-play guy said, "Hey man, let's just walk." I said, "Hey dog, there's a grizzly bear. There's been a grizzly bear sighting today on campus, and we got to go through campus again." He said, "Oh man, we're not going to see him." I said, "I know we're not going to see him." Well, I'm not going to see him because I'm driving.
I'm not. Yeah,
right. I'm driving, but it's just a mile away. Yeah, I'm driving. Okay. I say that's one thing. That's one thing about bears. If you can totally avoid them, you do. You just don't work.
Especially those Grizzlies, man. They're nothing to play with.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's for sure. All right, Dave. So we're getting close, man. We're a week away here from camp. You put a list out today, which I thought was kind of interesting, of vets on the bubble. Okay. And, some like Ortega-Whiteside, I don't think anybody's going to argue with you there that, he's in some trouble here. There were a couple names, though, that jumped out at me. And it's, I think a lot of it is just, it's good. It's a numbers thing, and the Eagles have some depth, but Sua Opeta and Kayvon Wallace. Like, I'll get into Jalen Reagor, but Sua Opeta and Kayvon Wallace were interesting to me. Guys who I think can play or maybe have potential play. Are both of those legitimately in real danger, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd kind of lean toward them being on the roster, especially Sua Opeta, who look, when they got him in 2019 from Weber, he was really raw. they had to do a lot of work with him, and they did, and they've gotten to the point where he's a viable backup. But even after Nate Herbig leaves, like, they just have so much depth there.
Yeah.
When you look at like Jack Driscoll, if they like him inside and outside, so depending on how the tackle situation shakes out, he could be their top interior backup if Isaac Seumalo wins that right guard job. And they have so many younger players that we don't know about. I mean, Coyote Awosika from Buffalo.
Yeah, you're big on
promise. Yep. Yeah, so they have these guys. They have a couple undrafted kids who they seem to like quite a bit. They paid quite a bit of money to William Dunkel and Joshua Sills, I think. So they have some younger players that could push for that spot. I think Sua is going to be on the team, but it's not a definite. And then with Kayvon, the Tart signing didn't help him.
Yes.
Because you figure that the top three safeties now, and that's a battle to watch in camp to see how that position ends up playing itself out and what the divvy up of playing time is going to be there. But you have Anthony Harris, you have Marcus Epps, and you have Jaquiski Tart. So they'll probably keep four safeties. Who's that fourth safety? Is it going to be Kayvon Wallace? Maybe. But what if they want to keep Andre Sachere, who's a better special teamer and proved himself to be a pretty good gunner last year? I don't think that spot is completely solidified. He's kind of like Sua, where I think he's on the bubble leaning toward in, but things can change, and he's got to stay healthy. Kayvon's had some chances to play on defense for this team. Even last year, they tried to play him ahead of Marcus Epps. They did, and he got hurt.
It's not in a position of great strength. You know what I mean? You'd like to see somebody succeed there and step up.
Yeah, and I was a big Kayvon guy. When they drafted him in the fourth round, I thought that was a heck of a steal. I watched him a lot at Clemson, and I thought, all right, the Doc comparisons are going to be unfair because they both went to Clemson, but he was a really good player. He was a guy coming out in that class where I thought they got him much later than he should have gone, and his career just hasn't quite worked out the way I thought it would. But it really starts with him staying healthy. He hasn't been able to stay healthy.
Well, that's the problem, man. Health is a huge, huge factor in that. But, looking at that list, man, and seeing guys on there like J.J. Ortega-Whiteside, Jalen Reagor, is this a product of how we drafting better, or is this a product of those guys just not being able to make it happen?
Honestly, it's more a product of those guys not being able to make it happen. Because if those guys – and look, I feel like we've gotten to the point now where it's almost like piling on with J-Jaw and Reagor.
You hate to even talk about it. I try to get you to talk
it's
about
like we know the situation, right? We know they haven't been good picks. We know they're not good receivers in the NFL. That's just – maybe they'll change that. But right now, where we sit right now, they haven't been good NFL players. And it has forced the Eagles to go elsewhere to get the receivers. If J-Jaw and Reagor look like studs, they don't draft Devontae Smith. They don't go out and trade for A.J. Brown. They don't have to use those resources elsewhere. And now you're at the point with J-Jaw where his contract won't save him. Reagor, the contract could still save him a little bit because he'd cost more in dead money if they cut him than if they keep him. So financially, it makes more sense to keep him around as a fifth receiver. That's kind of what J-Jaw had going for him last year. Well, that's out of the way in the fourth year of that rookie contract. They can cut him, save some cap room. He's got an uphill battle changing positions going to a tight end. I understand why he did it. I understand why the Eagles wanted him to do it, but I have a real hard time. When we're talking about bubble players, he's really leaning off the bubble the other way, whereas Rager's probably leaning in to being on the roster. He's probably the fifth receiver right now, but no guarantees. If they're in camp this year and he gets outplayed by Brayton Covey or Devin Allen or John Hightower, whoever it is, if he severely gets outplayed, they're going to have a hard time justifying keeping him over those guys despite the contract.
Yeah, it's tight, Dave. I mean, you look at this and you look at the depth chart, there's a few that are locks. Obviously, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Zach Pascal. You don't make the trade, to bring him in a system that he's familiar with coaches that love him if he's not here. So, and, Quez Watkins, you're at 4 right there. And then it's a bunch of guys really battling for that next spot. I guess you could justify Covey because he's a returner, right? I mean, and maybe put him in almost a special category, if you will. But man, that's a I'm in agreement with you, by the way. I think Rager makes it, but there's going to be some quality guys that are showing the door here.
Yeah, and the one we haven't talked about is Greg Ward, who he's meant a lot to this team. He had 53 catches a couple years ago, but the roster's just that much better right now. You know, a few years ago, they needed him to have that big of a role, and we saw the writing on the wall a little bit last year with how much his role was reduced. I still think he's an NFL player. I mean, I don't think
he'll catch on with somebody. Yeah.
I don't think he's a star, but, you know, he can play in this league. He's proven that. So when you're talking about him not making the team, you're, all right, that's because they have pretty good depth. Those top four, that's a pretty good four receivers there. When you go A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Zach Pascal, that's good and that's deep. And then that's what is the nice thing about that depth, because Jalen Reagor as your 5 sounds a lot better than Jalen Reagor as your 2, which is what they went into last season with.
Amen.
You know, I really didn't think that Tuipulotu, I think that's how you say his name, Marlon.
Tuipulotu, yeah.
I didn't think he was going to make the squad last year, but he did.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the chances are he makes the squad this year?
It's tougher because they added Jordan Davis, and now those you talk about 4 deep. That defensive tackle spot is 4 deep. You have Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams. They might only keep 4.
Yeah.
So right away, you're at a disadvantage. And if they keep 5, there's no guarantee it's going to be Tuipulotu. They
like Marvin Wilson.
Marvin Wilson, the Florida State kid who was thought to be a draft pick, went undrafted, went to Cleveland last year. The Eagles were able to steal him away after final cuts. They put him on their practice squad all last year. I'm excited to see him in training camp. And then the kid they just signed from Idaho, Noah Ellis.
I played with his pops.
Yeah,
Luther.
Luther, yeah.
No relation, by the way. In case I know everybody was wondering that. You know, we're not related.
Luther coached him at Idaho.
He was a first round to Detroit Lions. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, but Noah Ellis, he was hurt in OTAs, so we'll see where he's at in training camp. But he really, if they're going to go more, 3-4 at times, he's kind of a prototypical nose tackle. I mean, he's big bodied, and if they're looking for that position, he fits that more than Tuipulotu, more than Marvin Wilson, honestly, more than Milton Williams, who is going to be kind of a hybrid player, I'd imagine, in this defense because of the multiple fronts, and he can kind of play different spots. But it's a really tight group there. The depth is impressive, and that's why a 6th-round pick like Tuipulotu from last year is firmly on the bowl.
Dave, we don't talk about it much, but I'm glad you put him on the list. What's going to happen at punter? Because Sippo's stunk last year, frankly, and he got worse as the year went on.
Yeah.
And is there somebody else that's going to compete with him in camp here? Like, how is that going to work out?
No, I mean, he's the only punter on the roster. So unless they sign someone, but you have to remember with kickers and punters, there's always a guy. There's always a guy. A player, and like Jake Elliott doesn't have to worry about it. He's coming off a Pro Bowl season and his contract saves him. A guy like Aaron Siposs, he's competing against every other available punter who's out there.
Right.
If he goes to camp and doesn't perform well, there's nothing stopping the Eagles from holding a tryout, signing the best punter they bring in. And that's always on the table. And so while there's no direct competition in camp, and I think that with 90 spots on the roster, I think that would be a valuable use of a roster spot, honestly, bringing in a punter for some competition, even if it just pushes the guy. He's not like some fragile rookie. I mean, he's a 28-year-old guy. If he can't handle a little competition in camp, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I think he is competing against everyone else who's available, and and the NFL teams know the punters. You'll see when a team needs a punter or a kicker, they bring in the same 10 guys.
Yeah.
They just cycle these guys through, and everyone knows who they are. So that's a possibility. I think they'd like to keep him. I think they'd like to see him take a step because what really killed them at the end of last year were the shanks. He just had some awful shanks. He actually, throughout that season, he had some decent directional punting, and that's honestly more important in today's NFL than just the boomers that flip the field. But he's got to be better. And they'll talk about his role in the field goal unit, and that's important. He's the holder, and they really had something good going last year. Rick Lovato, him, and Jake Elliott. Jake Elliott was unbelievable last year. And I understand not wanting to throw that off, but that can't be the reason you keep him, because he has a primary job.
Absolutely.
And that's to be the punter. So there's a balance there. I think that's part of the reason they'd like to see him succeed, though.
Mm-hmm. You're muted, Bear.
First, I couldn't believe that they let Cameron Johnston go.
He was good.
Yeah, Pro
Well,
Bowler.
at the time when the Eagles were interested in keeping him, and then they surprised themselves by the success they had last year. Honestly, they looked at Cameron Johnston and said, "We want to keep him. Are we gonna?" I think he got 3 years, $11 million, which
pretty good money from Houston.
Really good money for a punter, and I don't know why Houston was paying for a punter.
Well, they're Houston, Dave. Just follow the everything.
Yeah, but when the Eagles didn't match that offer, it was because they thought that's kind of a luxury position,
right,
for our team and the position we're in when we have this really a first-year quarterback, first-year head coach.
$34 million still on the books.
They didn't think they were going to be that good.
Yeah.
If they thought they were a playoff team, then maybe they would have invested that money and kept.
That's a great point.
But they didn't.
Well, also looking at looking at everything that's going on, man.
I love punter talk, by the way.
Can't get enough
from training camp. We want to talk Rick Lovato, talk long snapper.
Yes. No, let's go back to Rager. No,
that's a staple now. But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. Looking at everything that's going on, and do they have the luxury of letting go a guy like Jalen Rager and JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and it not having repercussions and ramifications as with us, the fans?
They owe it to themselves to do whatever's best for the team, honestly. And sometimes draft picks get protected. They do. We all know that, right? It matters where you get drafted. Every coach will say it doesn't matter, but then we see the rosters and we go, oh, that matters. And the higher you get picked, the more chances you get in the league. That's just the way it goes. I'll tell you what, if one of those guys gets cut, they'll end up somewhere. Maybe not on a 53, but they'll end up somewhere. I don't know. A
fiery phoenix rising through the ashes.
Yeah, at least with J-Jaw, we've seen some glimpses in training camp.
Yeah.
Rager's numbers have been better in the season. He's put up better numbers, but they've also made him a focal point of the offense.
A lot of targets.
And they just can't do that again. I wouldn't be opposed to him being on the roster as the fifth guy. The problem with these two also is they've had good training camps before. Rager's been a little up and down in training camp, but he's made some spectacular plays. He's teased us all with, this time last year, we're a little bit less than this time last year. We saw him make those one-handed catches in the end zone, and everyone, oh, okay, maybe year 2 is the year for him, and it didn't work out that way. So it's not even if these guys have great training camps, no fans are going to think, okay, they've turned the corner, because we've seen that before. We've watched this movie and we know how it ends. So I don't even know if it's a luxury of being able to cut them. I just think that they're better. They're better at those spots right now. If they cut Rager, it's because he got outplayed in camp by take your pick. Those guys we mentioned earlier. There's a bunch of receivers on this roster. He'll need to get outplayed, and it'll have to be pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Whereas J-Jaw, man, he's going to have to really show something to make this team, because you have Dallas Goedert, you have Jack Stoll, who's the incumbent number 2. You just drafted Grant Calcaterra, who's a better pass catcher. You have Tyree Jackson, who's probably going to end up on the PUP list, so you don't have to worry about that right now. But is J-Jaw going to outplay Jack Stoll or Grant Calcaterra, guys who have played the position for a long time?
No.
Probably not.
No, absolutely not. Let me ask you, David. Great question from Adam in our chat section. There's a lot of noise and smoke around Jesse Bates. The Bengals say apparently he's unhappy. He won't report with the franchise tag, etc. Eagles have done a lot. Howie's been very aggressive. Is this still a possibility, or is this a real long shot?
Based on the Bengals' history, I mean, they're not a team that generally gives in. I mean, they don't want to trade him. He's one of their best players. They're a team that just went to the Super Bowl, and he was a big part of that. So they're going to exhaust everything they possibly can to make sure he's out there playing for them week one. We do know also that Howie Roseman will take a look around the league, and it's his job and it's their staff's job to know when there's a way they could possibly steal a player. And when I say steal, it's not really steal because you're going to have to give up a ton. But if you can pry away a player in a situation that's not going well for them, kind of like AJ Brown, right? Or Darius Slay, like he's found these kinds of trades before. It's just with this particular player and that team, if I'm Cincinnati, I'm calling his bluff a little bit. I want to see if this guy shows up because that's a Super Bowl team. And they're going to trade him away for draft picks? Why? Make him play. Try to make him play. I think that it could be quite a stare down in Cincinnati.
Interesting. And by the way, great job color coordinating the shirt and the paint on the wall.
I'm almost like blending into the background here.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a floating head.
But it's borderline amazing. I mean, it's great work out of you, Dave. Your colleague wrote about Nick Sirianni, Ruben, today for the site, and it's one of the things I wanted to ask you about anyway. Really an interesting first year. I mean, he comes in, nobody really is that familiar with him. They start off slowly, they get it together. There's some things people look at as being a little bit of, kind of hokey, maybe. Whatever. I don't care as long as the players buy in.
Well, if it is hokey, it doesn't mean it doesn't work.
I agree. And where he really got the buy-in was from the vets in particular, which stood out to me. Of course, if you're a rookie, yeah, coach, whatever you say. But the older guys really bought in too. What's your sense of him now with a year under his belt going into year two?
I was impressed by him last year. And look, hokey's not a bad thing. Doug Peterson was pretty hokey. Want some ice cream? Like that. Right. Doug Peterson, I mean, he was kind of goofy too. Mm-hmm. And it worked out. They won Super Bowl. So I think what strikes me about Nick Sirianni is how authentic he is.
Yes.
Of all the head coaches I've covered, he's the most normal dude. Like he's the most unassuming guy. Like you could grab a beer with that guy and not think twice about it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that part of it comes naturally to him. And I think that his players appreciate it. They kind of see him as a normal guy. And he started to impress me over a year ago. He was early on that job and they were trying to figure out OTAs. That was the first sign. I was like, okay, this guy kind of gets it. When he met with a group of his veterans, they came in because you guys probably remember last year, the NFLPA kind of pushed the teams to say, hey, we're not going to OTAs given all the COVID cases and the fear of safety. And Nick Sirianni sat down with some veterans and they figured out a way to at least get them in the building and do a little something. And that was the first time I thought, okay, this guy understands it. He's a player's coach, but he's not a pushover either. And I think that's really important. And when you're a player's coach, you can't be a pushover. And there's a very fine line. I've seen him ream out players.
Yep.
On the field. And I think sometimes that's what people don't realize. It's that no coach can be one extreme or the other. Mm-hmm. And I go back to Bill Belichick because and I'm off on a tangent here, but you have to take this ride.
We love tangents. We're all about it.
Bill Belichick is known as this tough nose, hard guy, right? Yeah. But he has moments of tenderness. And I think where all the assistants that he's had that have gone elsewhere to fail haven't understood that. They've taken all the hard nose and none of the soft tender moments, and you can't do that. And Nick Sirianni is kind of the opposite of that. He's the tender guy. He's connection, but he'll also chew you out if that 10-yard out became a 9-yard out. Those are the things that are important for a coach when he's a player's coach to still have the authority and the heavy hand when he needs it. And he's shown the understanding there of what his players need when they need it. And I was impressed by that more than anything last year, honestly. It was just how he connected with his players. And every time he starts talking about his core values, you can see me kind of slump. Oh, here he goes again. But that consistency matters too. Everything he says for a reason that's very thought out. And his players really like him. They play hard for him. So I was impressed by him his first year. And another part of what impressed me was honestly how humble he was. The humility for an NFL head coach is sometimes not there. He showed it a few different times, most notably handing over play calling to Shane Steichen, which some people might view as a negative. I viewed it as a positive, that this guy said, hey, this isn't working.
Right. I did too.
And also, I think it kind of coincided with them becoming a heavy run team. Any head coach that says, it's not about me, it's about whatever works for the team, and if I'm not doing the best job I need to do, let's hand it off and I'll work on other stuff. That impressed me. And we'll see where that goes. I don't know the long-term goals for him as a offensive coach. Does he want to be the play caller at some point again? You would think. But right now, I've been impressed by him giving that up.
Yeah, you look at Sirianni, and he no longer has to go out and give the flowers and that type of speech already, because he's already laid the roots. The players love that. They understand that. And, the stream hits right on the head. Remember last year with Barnett, and he had an unsportsmanlike. And he turned around and he said, and they saw it, and you could see him said, that kid, what did he say? That kid,
it's always him.
It's always him. Yeah, it's always him.
Yeah.
But after it, they tried to, as we as the media try to say something about it. He's like, no, that's not what happened. He covered it for his guy.
Yeah.
And you want a coach like that, man. I had the same thing with BC. Bill Cowher's the same way. Everybody thought he was this hard-nosed coach, big chins, spitting every time he says something to you. He may have been like that during games, and he had that persona. But on the field, he was the greatest guy in the world. He used to come in on Fridays and come in and play linebacker against the defense. And we would light his ass up out there. We didn't have any pads on, but every time we could take a shot at him, we would give it to him every single time. But that's the type of coach he was. You wanted to be around him. I see Nick going in that same direction.
Absolutely. Dave, listen, man, we love your coverage. We can't wait to get it cranked up this upcoming week. Enjoy the last week of your sanity before it gets nuts. But
I see you tonight. Well, I see you tonight.
No,
you still on vacation?
No, I'm working. I'm just not on the show. I think I'm co-hosting Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I'm going. Yeah.
I'm filling in for you. Big shoes.
Right. Same height, same size. Everything works. Yeah. Dave's literally in one of Barrett's shoes when he does the show.
And we're down in your top 25 list. We're down to number 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So
we're almost done. Most important players. AJ Brown's number 4, by the way.
All right, we'll check that out. Dave, appreciate it, man. NBC Sports Philadelphia, NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com as well. Dave Zangaro. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, guys. See you.
All right, you got it. Let's get a quickie here. We'll come back. Ben Davis is going to be joining us. We'll get a little Phillies overview and look forward as well to the second half of the season. A little later, more NFL stuff. Barrett and I are going to dive into a bunch of things with the NFL, including teams who haven't won a Super Bowl you want to see, best receivers all in the game, you name it. And the announcement is still coming. We promise you, folks. Don't go anywhere. Barrett Brooks, Rob Ellis, Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right, let me tell you about Pro Action Restoration. You got a home, you got a business, you got a property. You've had water, fire, smoke, mold damage, you name it, and you don't know who to turn to. I got the people for you, because Pro Action is on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. I've gone through it. They came out, they assisted me and my family and did an unbelievable job. Cleaned the place up. The crew was professional. The price was reasonable. Every box checked off. They're licensed, bonded, fully insured. They've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action will work in conjunction with your insurance company as well. So that could be enormous. Water, fire, smoke damage, mold remediation, you name it, they can handle it. Give them a call. 610-623-3760. That's 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.